I'm kind of sorry about that. But hopefully you'll enjoy it. As you can see, designing games for 2013 is a little bit different than maybe what you saw on the blurb, because I changed it a bit, and I'm sorry, but I wanted to, and I feel bad, but let's just continue anyway. So let's start. Hi. My name is Eoin. This is my email address and my handle on Twitter, which I don't really use very much. So if you send me messages there, I probably won't respond. But it's there if you want it. I've got a master's in digital game design and theory. I did it about a year ago, and I really think that education, in terms of this discipline in design, is very important. So I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of background about myself. But before that, I also have a bachelor's degree in theater design philosophy, which I kind of want to talk a little bit about what I believe a designer is, and what they should be, and how they fit into the production model of games today, and hopefully in the future. And finally, at the moment I'm working at Rovio Entertainment as a games designer. I started there about a year ago, and I work on the mobile brands, like our Angry Birds brand. I do some of the work there. I'm mainly involved in our friends, or our social aspect. I worked on Google Chrome, HTML5, social networks with Facebook. And at the moment, I'm crunching pretty hard just to get our new Star Wars game out with our team, which is next week. So if you have a smart device or pretty much any platform, you should definitely check it out. It's a really good game. So I want to get into this topic quickly. My approach to design. I kind of wanted to explain a little bit more about a designer in terms of what you should be, or maybe what I think you should be in today's industry. And first of all, you need to think logically. My philosophy background. You need to think logically about what you're designing, what you're creating, because you're going to be working with very logical people. You're going to be working with programmers, and that's how they think. They think logically. And if you can't think logically, how can you express your ideas to the person you're working with? So, like logical design, something like the UI, the UX. How does it work? Where does it sit? How is a user going to flow through this? How do I explain that to the programmer? Another example would be something simple like the analytics behind it. Maybe you might know, but designing by analytics is really good. It helps you. Having different test scenarios, using your user base. If you have a big user base, it's quite a logical way of approaching how to fix a problem. Systems design. How do you create a combat system? It's all logic. You know, you have ideas, you have a creative idea, but you need to think logically how you create that. And finally, another example would be something like economy. How do you reward your player? Where does that money go? Is it a soft currency if you're using a social term? Is it going to be XP? Where do they spend it? You need to have these systems. That's all very, 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 very logical. But of course, I also think to be a good designer, you definitely need to be creative. Absolutely. You can't just be logical, you also need to be creative. But there's creative design as well, because you're going to be working with extremely creative people all the time. You're going to be working with artists. You're going to be working with people who just think creatively. They don't really think logically. And you're going to be working with people who just think logically and not really creatively. Now, that's not necessarily true. I don't think that you're working with robots and you're working with just people who draw all day, because they are also logical and creative in their own mind. But you kind of have to be the glue that holds everything together. So, for example, something that you might decide is creative would be level design. A good level designer shows their creativity in their levels. And I've worked with a lot of level designers recently, and I can tell just by looking at a level who made it. And I think that's great. I think that you should be able to express your creativity through the work that you do. I also think that story is very creative. People who do story design are these kind of aspects like character design, environment design. This is a creative side. But if you want to be a designer in today's industry, I think you need to have everything. You need to kind of encompass the entirety of these aspects. Now, this is just some aspects. There's way, way, way more. But these are the things that I do, like day by day. I don't do one. I don't do some. I do pretty much all of these. And people might say, well, that's not necessarily true in the industry, because a person might go and be just a UI designer. They might just be a UI designer their whole career, and that's fair enough. But I work with a small team, and I'm pretty much the only designer or one of the only designers, and I like to to be able to know how to do a lot of these things. Maybe further on I'll start really thinking about one, but right now, if you are an independent designer, you're not working with a team, and you don't know this stuff, you're going to have trouble. You're not gonna, if you don't know how to do all these kind of things, or some of them, you're going to be in trouble. So the talk's going to change a little bit. This is just what I feel about design at the moment. But I just kind of want to talk about like what's next in terms of a designer. As a designer, what do you want to be thinking about? What kind of games do you want to make? Where do you want to make a mark? Do you want to be known? And I was thinking, well, the industry, what's going to happen next in the industry? And I started thinking about it, brainstorming, kind of thinking, what's the immediate next thing? Rather than what's in the future, but I started thinking, what's the immediate next thing to develop for? What would be exciting to design a game for? And motion control is questionable. Like, we've kind of had some interesting things come out in the last few years in terms of motion control, and the Wii U I played is pretty good, the Wii U is good. And how companies are these kind of big consoles and everybody is getting behind motion control. And I have to say, honestly, I think it's got some problems. I think that designing for these kind of games has problems because one, the technology right now is quite primitive. Like, it's not as advanced as we want it to be. And I think when you're designing a game for that, it becomes really, really difficult to make really accessible gameplay. And I think the second problem is, it's very expensive. And I'm not talking just for the development cost, which is also very expensive, and the teams that you have behind it, but I'm talking about the consumer's expense. Think about it, you gotta buy TV, you gotta buy an Xbox, you gotta buy a big living room if you want to play Connect, you know? You gotta get everything that you need. It's so expensive, it costs you a lot of energy and money just to even start. So your end user base is quite small. You're really not making a game for many, many people. And I think that's a problem. As again, it's kind of more iterative, there's too many dependencies. You need to think about so many things just to develop this platform. And it's already kind of being done, and I think that it's still going to be around, but it's maybe not going to be as big as we would, or as they would have liked it to be, but it's still going to be around. So if it's not that, what about interactive TV? Last year I heard, like, interactive TV, oh my god, it's going to be the next big thing, it's going to be amazing. Interactive TV is everything. And I have to say that it's a really nice idea of interactive TV and playing games through your TV and browsing through your TV, and it's going to happen, and we are definitely going to see this happening, but maybe not straight away, because it still has some problems. It's not going to be immediate. It's in its infancy. Like Samsung TV, I looked at the Samsung catalog, for example, and there wasn't many options of like, do you want to spend €8,000 or do you want to spend €7,000? And I was like, I don't really want to spend any thousands of euro. And I think that it's still got a long way to go, but it will be there, but maybe not so immediately. Again, very expensive. Just very expensive to develop for. You got to get the kit to even to start thinking about it, and like I just think it's going to be a little while away. And on a gaming front, I do think it's going to come when Sony and Microsoft and the big guys kind of decide, hey, let's integrate our consoles into the display unit, let's build them into that unit. So when you buy your entertainment system, you've got everything. You can see that with like Xbox right now with their smart glass. They're trying to connect all the devices. They're trying to integrate everything together. And it's coming, but it's going to be a while. So if it's not virtual, or if it's not that, what about virtual reality? And I think, again, this is like, you know, the next big thing is going to be virtual reality. It's like 3D. Oh, it's going to be amazing, you know. And yes, there's a lot of excitement about virtual reality, like a lot. For example, the Kickstarter fund this year, like I think really, if you're paying attention to this, people are going crazy about this. They want to see more games being developed. I'd love to design games for this kind of stuff right now, but I actually think that while we see a lot of these devices coming out and like different kind of variants of them and how it affects your reality and playing games through like real life or playing games in a headset, I also think that it's going to have some problems because as a designer, I don't have access to this development kit. I don't have access to the tools. If I was an independent designer, I wouldn't be able to make games for this personally. I don't have the skill set to do it, and I don't have the hardware to do it. So for me as a designer, right now, this is not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at something a little bit easier. And I also think, again, it's going to be really risky. Like, these companies, they already made a big big gamble when it came to motion control, and I think that it didn't pay off the way they wanted it to pay off. And so Kickstarter is like someone else's money, and they're going to see how that goes before they really invest their time into this. So again, it's going to happen probably, but it's just a long way away. It's going to take some time for us to really see the power of VR as developers, as like the everyman to start making games for that. It's going to be like quite far in the future. And I think, well, if it's not these things, if it's not interactive TV, if it's not virtual reality, if it's not motion control, like really, what is the next big thing for me as a developer, as a designer? What do I really want to work on? And I have to say that it's mobile. Again, I mean, mobile's not new, right? You can't really say, hey, oh no, the next big thing's mobile. It's going to be amazing, because everyone here probably has a smartphone or close enough. Like a lot of people have some sort of like mobile device, be it a tablet, phone. Something that they connect to each other with and connect to their games with, their entertainment. And we see, the reason I think that's going to happen is because we're seeing the big guys are really pushing hardware. They are like, Apple announces a new iPad every day, and like, Google are pushing themselves as hard as to get involved in that space. Windows 8 is like pretty much a touchscreen. It's a touchscreen, like, it's such a touchscreen interface that people hate it because they can't develop for it, but it's mobile. And Samsung, and there's other dogs there as well, but I don't know, like Nokia, which are kind of struggling. But anyway, yeah, so I think that they're going to push the hardware. That's great for me, I don't have to worry. Like, they're pushing the hardware. If the hardware's accessible, that's got to be great for me as a developer. And why I think it's really good. I think that mobile is going to be really good because it's a multi-purpose device. It's not just locked into one thing. You've got so many things you can do with your phone or your tablet, and people do it all the time. They're social with it. They use it for traveling, like looking on maps, looking for restaurants, and entertainment, like games and film and whatever, and work. And why that's good for us as games developers, as designers, is you can almost guarantee that whether the person uses it for work or has it for social or for whatever, they have it with them. You can't guarantee someone has a Kinect. You can't guarantee someone has an $8,000 TV in their house that they want to play a game through. But you can pretty much guarantee or start banking on it that people are going to have these devices with them almost all the time. And if you can guarantee on that, that's a great platform to develop for. What else? Yeah, it's accessible. Like, I think that people can just get in touch with these mobile devices more and more. They're everywhere. I see them. Like, I see restaurants with iPads sitting there, like, you can go in and play on an iPad the restaurant owns or something like that. And they're just around, like, it's really easy to get one. And they're quite cheap. I think smart devices are getting really cheap, and Kindles and like lower tier iPads and stuff, they're quite cheap. So I think that this is a great platform to start developing for. And I think that we're going to see them just getting better. It's just going to get better and better and better, more power, more battery, more display. The games are going to be able to run better on them. I'm really, really going to see some interesting things happen. The second thing I think that's going to happen, mobile and social again. Like, again, you might think that I'm just like iterating what's been happening before, but I'll get to it. I think that social connectivity is really interesting right now. We've got a lot of platforms like Xbox Live, Steam, and games. The Game Center, and these are great. Like, you connect with your friends. You can, hey, I'm playing a game, and you play games, and we play games together. But the problem is that they're actually a single purpose. They're changing, but most of these are just they're just for playing games. So the people that you can only connect with are people who play games. You don't really I don't go, hey mom, do you want to go on Steam? And let's play Left 4 Dead together. She'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about at all. And so while they're great and they're really good at what they do, they demand you to kind of already be involved in that system. You need to already be integrated into the system before you can actually connect with other people. And again, they're platform specific. Like Steam is pretty locked down, Xbox is pretty locked down, Game Center is quite locked down. And I think that while they're around, they don't really have the ability to go across various platforms. And so what does that mean? I think that this is a computer, and this is a person, and this is another person, and they're connected through social networks. Now this is an example. I'm not saying that Facebook is the be-all and end-all of everything. I'm just saying that it is a connector, and it's originally started on us sitting in front of a screen, in front of the canvas, and we're connecting, and we're social, and games are, we see that a lot. Like some companies have just capitalized on this so well. They've made really, really good games, and they've made really, really terrible games, but they've made a lot of money, and I think the primitiveness of it and getting to all those people was really interesting. And then it just grew. It just became like, hello, and hello, oh, hi, hey, and people just connected with each other. And it's a billion people, a billion accounts. This is what Facebook has said. This month they've said, hey, we've hit 1 billion accounts. 1 billion people connected to the same integrated system. That's pretty impressive, I have to say. It's really, really impressive. Who plays World of Warcraft, roughly, or has played it, or has spent any time in an MMO? Okay, just quite a few people. When I played MMOs, and I played World of Warcraft, I was like, oh, I'm playing the biggest game in the world, it's 12 million people playing, oh my god. Wow. And like 2004, 12 million people playing the same game was a huge feat. Like that was just incredible, and everyone was like, MMOs are going to be the thing from now on, subscription-based, yes, we're going to make games and make so much money, people are going to love them. And then today, yeah, it's still around 10 million playing that game, but then League of Legends is, what, 35 million? You know? It's a completely different game, it's free. It's free, and it's just doing so well, and it's a really, really good game. But 35 million is nothing. Like, it's nothing in comparison to the exposure that Facebook has right now. And what I'm getting to is, that's 1 billion registered users, and along comes the mobile phone, smartphone. And what we see is actually 50% of these 1 billion registered users now are on mobile. They connect, not all the time, but they can connect to this through mobile. And that's really interesting because everyone was developing for Canvas. Everybody was developing social games for Canvas. You know, Zynga capitalized on this. A lot of game companies have done really, really well on Canvas. But now they're like, oh no, all our users, they're leaving. They're going to mobile, and we don't have games on mobile. And that's why I'm thinking this is going to be really, really, really interesting. We're gonna see this migration of people is just going to keep happening in a few years. Like that Canvas, especially in the Western world, it's just going to be obsolete. We're getting there, and so companies are scrambling like right now just to really, really, really get involved with this mobile space. How can they make their games use Facebook as the kind of the glue that holds everything together, but really. The game is the same. So you have the same experience whether I'm playing on my computer and you're playing on your phone, we're sharing the same experience together. But what really has changed? As I said, from 2004 to 2010, social game was mostly Canvas. There's a billion smartphones in the world. I'm not saying they're all being used, probably sitting on shelves, but there's 1 billion of them. And there's 1 billion Facebook accounts. And as of October 2012, I said 50% of the users are mobile. It's not going to change. Social networks like Facebook bring together multiple devices instead of a user base. Yeah, if your game isn't able to go mobile on Canvas, someone else's game is going to be able to, and you are going to struggle. And as a designer, I want to make a game that's fun on multiple devices, because right now we see a lot of games coming out, and they're cross-compatible between Canvas and mobile. We see like games like Bubble Witch Saga, Diamond Dash, and Jewel Blitz, right? Now, I'm not going to talk about these games very much, but they make a lot of money. They make a lot of money. And I really, really, really believe that this is like weak. I think that these games are okay, but they're not great. I think that people have evolved. I think that the player base has changed, and I think that mobile users are a bit different to Canvas users. And so, while it's a good starting point as a games designer, as someone who's looking at this space, I want to make a game that's going to be like that. You know, I don't want to see mobile games anymore. I don't want to see like Match 3. They're great games and they're being done and people like them, but I think we've got the chance here, really, to do something absolutely awesome. Now, the third thing is freemium. I know freemium, it's around again, but I think that you've got to combine a lot of these three together to kind of make this successful, the recipe. And it's exploded. It's just gone crazy. Freemium's gone nuts. Like, it's literally just taking everybody by storm. And when you think of freemium, you might think of stuff like Facebook and social games, or Android is like people don't want to spend money on apps. But like, it's also PC. And like, again, League of Legends is a great example of making good game free. PlanetSide 2 is coming out soon. I haven't been able to get a beta key, but I've been watching it. I'm like, it's great. It's a first-person shooter. It's free to play. They made a really good model. They seem to be doing quite good with that. There's a bunch of great games using this model, and they're designing around it. They're not making a game and failing making a game and then deciding, hey, let's make this game free and then try and make money out of it. they're actually starting from the ground up and they're like, hey, let's make this game free and have systems in place that users who really want to experience this game a bit more can enjoy it more. Rather than putting a paywall in the way, they're actually saying, hey, do you want to like Team Fortress 2? Do you want a hack? You know, it's your choice. It's not going to make you better at the game. It's going to keep it competitive, but it's your choice. And if you want to do that, that's up to you. And I think Valve and Riot are on the right path here. It's constantly being iterated. Like this freemium is not the sense. You know, there's changes. Things are happening. People are changing around. Like there's problems too. Like it's hard to make a free game good because people don't want to invest too much time on something they're not going to make money. So you see people just making lazy attempts and saying, "Hey, it didn't work. I'll just try the next one." So I think it's really, really difficult to make a good game free without having like really good passion behind it. Secondly, I think it relies heavily on milking a certain. But right now, it's you don't care. A lot of companies don't really care about their 98% or 96% of the user base. Realistically, they don't care as much as they care about the 3 or 4% that they're getting money from. And you see that in really bad design. You see that design like, hey, you've played for 20 minutes, here's a wall, you want to play more, and if you don't play, they don't care, like you're gone, and they don't care because someone else will stay. And that's not good. I don't think that's good design, I think that's a problem. And finally, I think that another problem with this is that if we keep using these tactics, we're actually conditioning players. Hopefully I'm not going too fast, but if we use these tactics, we're going to condition players to stop trusting in this system. Start like thinking free to play is just trying to like, it's a con. And I don't think that's right because I think it can be better. It's not really, it can be a con, it is a con sometimes, but then sometimes it isn't. And it's hard to distinguish them sometimes as a user. So we need to do better, and we can. Personally, that's what I'm looking at. That's what this talk's kind of about. Is like in the next year, I'm going to be focusing my attention on this kind of these 3 things. So like 2013 for me, it's going to be a year of like compatibility between mobile users and desktop users. And I think that you want to make a game that from the ground up can be really enjoyable on both sides. I think that you should really consider free to play as a model and not try and like get money up front. Because if you do that, you start making systems that rely on premium and it becomes. Well, it's not bad. First of all, I'm not going to say that this is the only way to do it. There's so many different parts of the industry, so many games in the industry that do different things. But I think that free to play is something I want to look at. And finally, I think that if you have major social connectivity, such as like an overarching thing like Facebook, you end up getting your canvas and mobile compatibility better, your freemium models better, and I think that we like Facebook are going crazy. They're really pushing. They see 50% of the users on mobile. They see a lot of the users on mobile. They can't monetize off that well, so they're trying to actually make their mobile experience better. And their shares went up this week because they're really going to make their mobile applications on iPhone and everything really, really good now because they see this isn't going to change. They need to adapt. And if they're adapting and all the hardware guys are adapting, that's good for us as developers because it gives us a lot of opportunity to really get in touch with our user base for free, which is amazing. And finally, just to iterate, if you do this, you've got accessibility, you've got a user base, you've got a retention model. And I think that's pretty solid. I think that's the next year. And then maybe in 2014 I'll talk about virtual reality. But I'm just thinking that personally the next thing for me would be this. And that's pretty much it. It was pretty short, but thanks for your attention. Again, here's my details. And I will take some questions now if anybody has any questions. And yes, I didn't talk about Angry Birds. If you just put your hand up if you've got a question, and I can get a microphone out to you. No one has any questions.
So, you're talking about one single big next thing, right? But it's not gonna be like that, right? there is this one huge thing, but around it there are, I mean, okay, it may be the largest thing it may dominate the scenery, but if you take together all the small things around it, they are much bigger taken together than this single, and if everyone just jumps on the single bandwagon and tries to be the one person who does this single big thing well, it's not gonna happen, right? It's like winning a lottery.
No. I think you're right. Like, it's like saying the gold rush to iOS back in the day was the lottery, and I don't think so. I think the guys who made good games did well. I mean, Tiny Wings, I really enjoyed that. It was just one guy. Yeah, maybe it was like winning the lottery, but it was a really good game. I think it was recognized for being a good game. And I think that I use Facebook as an example, but there are other social platforms. It's just the idea of connecting your games across multiple platforms. In fact, you're saying that everyone's jumping on this one bandwagon, but I'm saying you're actually getting onto every single device that you can get onto. You're not getting onto one device, you're getting onto Android, you're getting onto iOS, you're getting onto PC, you're getting onto everywhere. If you develop your game that's compatible with this social connection in mind, yeah, I think you're jumping on a bandwagon, but like that's what gaming is, you know? Otherwise you're gonna go for a niche, and that's fair enough. Like, I honestly think, this is my opinion, this is the thing, I'm not talking about this is what everyone should do, I'm talking about this is what I want to do. And also, indie games and the way they run is great. I think so many things happening, like esports are going to be huge this year. Like esports are going to be even bigger than they are now next year. And we see a lot of, like there's so many things happening. I can't talk about everything, but there's going to be so many things happening. This is just one example of it. Especially as a one developer or a small team, this is something that you can do, you can actually do, and you might get a pretty good chance of getting in touch with a user base and getting in touch and getting a good crowd going. Like we see companies like King.com and what's the other one now? There's a couple of companies coming out now, and they weren't that big a while ago, but they've just, you know, they've just done a successful. They've used this model and they've done really well. And so, I think if you do quickly, you might get there ahead of the curve. But there's so many things. I mean, we are going to see all the other things I mentioned, like interactive TV and VR and all that kind of stuff. It's going to happen in the next year, but not to the same extent. I think you're going to see a lot more of this. Yeah, I've talked with Facebook people, and I have a feeling that this is going to be quite big. But yeah, don't put all your eggs in one basket. But if you're going to develop something, develop what you want to do. This is what I want to do. This is what I think you should want to do. But it's not everyone wants to do. But it's a good question.
I just want to ask how look the partnership with these big companies like Google and Apple, because let's say for example that I develop a game. It's popular and people like it, and I want to start earn money on this game. So how it looks?
How do you do it?
I didn't, but I just want to...
Okay. Well, Facebook and Apple have this kind of like little an agreement that they don't. So if you sell anything through Apple, they take a cut. It's like 30% flat fee.
I'm talking about selling this game for free to download, free to play.
Yep. And
earning money on things like ads, but is there something more than ads to earn money?
Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry. I thought I was. All right. Yeah. I mean, when you say free to play, it's not like everything that you give is free. I mean, the model. It's the whole talk on free to play could be brought out, but usually you create a system where there's a point that a certain percentage of your user base will have options to pay for certain things in your game. So you'll have, in a perfect world, you'll have it so that it's not necessary, but it's so much fun and desirable that and people could put in so much time that they might want to do it, like a consumable power-up, for example, in a game, or extra content that they can't get for free, perhaps, or peripheral stuff, aesthetics. Like in League of Legends, they make most of their money through non-competitive payments. So you don't buy to win, you don't pay to win, you actually pay to look cooler than your friend. And you know, that's an interesting model, and they pay a lot of attention to the art, they pay a lot of attention to that side of things. So there's many, many, many ways to do it. I'd say the best, I won't get into it now, but I think the best way is just to look at how free-to-play games work. CSR Racing, okay, CSR Racing is a great example of this. This is a free-to-play game. It uses a lot of mechanics like energy. You can only play so much time, and then you run out of energy, you've got to pay more money if you want to play it, but you can wait. But the people who play that game are people who love cars, and they love racing. And they spend so much time making those cars look really, really, really good. And that, even though it's pretty much a single-player game, people were like, oh, I feel so good, I've got this amazing car. And they spent money to make their cars look better because they felt that it was worth it to them. And CSR Racing was it was a free game, and it was top grossing, making the most money on an iOS store. Like, that's a really good example of, like, you pick a market, you pick a game you think will be really good, fitting the model, and you just work on the aspects you know your user will want to see. The people who play that game like cars. Make your cars look good. Make them feel good. That's good. That's an example, but I'm not going to get into how to monetize, but there's a lot of ways to do it. And there's the right way, and maybe there's the wrong way. So, yeah. Any more questions?
I would like to ask about potential risk of oversaturation of this market, because obviously there is a huge user base that you mentioned for these devices, but isn't there a risk that people that go into one game, like in League of Legends, they do it for 100%, and then they won't look for any more games like that? So is there even place on this market for new players?
Yeah, well, you're saying that the market's solid and that no one moves and no one plays. Yeah, there's going to be people who for a certain amount of time will like lock themselves into one experience. But I think mobile users, like I'm talking mobile here, I'm not talking like League of Legends is a pretty hardcore PC game, and the people who play it are really, really into their gaming, and they go down and like they're trying to make it a very fair sport basically. And I think when I'm talking mobile, I'm talking to someone who has like 2 minutes of their day to, you know, while they're on the way to work or on the toilet or whatever, and it's a different user. They're not the same, but the model works the same. The model will work the same, but it's not the same person, or it's not the same person at the same time. Like a League of Legends player, when he's on the toilet, doesn't say, "Oh, I want to play a game of League of Legends for 40 minutes." Like he doesn't have the time to do that. So, you know, what will he do? If he's a gamer, maybe he'll play something else. I don't think anyone can be locked down to one thing. It's a good question. I don't really know. I think some people might be locked down into certain things, but it's like saying, I read only Twilight. Only Twilight. I just love that man. He's just so handsome. But I mean, like it's just not the way it is. And it's like saying, like, I read. What do you read? You know, I read newspapers. I read books. I read blogs. I read the back of my shampoo bottle. You know, there's so many different aspects of what that is. So it's like gaming. What is gaming? It's like, you know, there's so many aspects, and I don't think you can just lock yourself down into one. And I don't think people will. And if they do, that's fine. You can't get everybody. In fact, you probably don't even want to get everybody. You probably want to get a small amount. So.
Yeah, maybe League of Legends wasn't a good example. I meant more like if someone is playing on mobile and he's going to marketplace of some sort, there is like 1,000 of games. And on big releases like big games, I know Skyrim, Call of Duty, it's really easy to market them because it's comparatively easy to show what is going on there and what options for marketing small teams that make games for mobile have. It's hard to sell it, right?
Well, yeah, it depends on how good you are at marketing. I mean, yes, big companies might do things like pay their way to the top spot, or they have the budget to get themselves seen, and that's going to happen. You know, I have no golden key to say, hey, this is how you make all the money in the world, because I don't know. But I'm saying that if you make a really, really good game and you follow these steps, perhaps you actually have a good chance of maybe not making everybody, but virality is your tool here. You make something good, people will know. I mean, YouTube. People, like, I don't know, every month I see a YouTube video for a person who didn't even know that they were going to be, you know, the next Gangnam Style, or whatever the hell. Like, it's really hard to tell, but if you understand the platform really well and you know what you're doing, I I think you can. You don't need a marketing budget. I think you can just learn how to connect with your user, really understand who that person is, and then it will take itself from there. But I don't think there is one way. There's many, many, many ways. And people, I didn't study marketing. I studied game design, so I don't really know. But I've seen some really good marketing strategies, how to get games out there. Kickstarter is an example of like how to get it out there. Like most of the Kickstarter funds that get backed and actually get money are the ones that have really, really funny or quite interesting videos. So like there's trends that you got to follow. There's certain kind of things you have to tick, but you don't need like 100 million euro just to get like to the top spot. Probably do it on like with a really good game and the right connections. Probably do it on like maybe no money at all if you're really lucky. Any more questions? I've actually got quite a lot of time because I was told I had 30 minutes, but then I was told I had an hour. So.
I want to ask about how the first step of making the game look like. I mean, if mostly you come up with idea, or mostly you sit around in group and think, you know, mobile devices are being more popular, and let's make the game on mobile devices.
Can you repeat that one more time? Sorry.
I think the first step. What was that? What it looks like? If you do you come up with idea first, or do you think about making a game for something without an idea?
Yeah, I think it's you look at the idea comes, well, second, but not really, but it should. Like, you have really good game ideas. If you're a designer, you probably have game ideas every day. In fact, most of the time you learn game ideas from other people, and it's just about explaining them to everybody. But if you want to make a game idea work on a specific platform, you need to know the platform first before you can really know if the game's going to work on that. You can't be like, oh, I've got the best game ever, it's going to be the best mobile game, and I don't know anything about mobile at all. Like, if you don't know your platform, you don't know what kind of games will work on it. So, I think yes, really, really understand the platform first, and then if you're a good game designer, you'll be able to really exploit that and use that, whether it's mobile, canvas, virtual reality, motion control, interactive television, they're all different platforms, and you see games coming out with touchscreen controls that are just ingenious, and they're really, really smart. But it's the designer thought about touchscreen. They didn't think about the game first, they thought about the interfacing, and they said, how does the player interface with my game? And how do I make that fun? And then they did that, they came up with a game idea, they iterated, they changed, they made it really fun. And that's how they did it. And I think that's a very good way of doing it. Because if we grew up with games, we kind of grew up with there was one way of playing games, and it was like through a console, and maybe a PC is a console as well, but that's the only way we kind of knew it, gamepad or mouse, and we were kind of trained to think that's the only way you can make games. It's like, oh, I'm gonna make a first-person shooter. You forgot about the platform because it was inherent in your design. It was like, of course that's the only way people play the game. That's the only way UI is done. That's the only way first-person shooters should be. That's the only way, yada, yada, yada. And I think that now there's so many different ways to play games that you need to really focus on the kind of platform that you're working with first before you know. And the more time that you spend making games, the more time you spend with the platforms, it just comes naturally. You start thinking about, oh, this would be really fun. If we did this, we could try this out. It's quite natural. Thank you. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5. I can count.
Hello. I have a question about fast prototyping of a game ideas. Do you use any kind of prototyping tools, just to convince yourself that your idea plays good before you give it to the developers?
Yeah, I don't need to convince myself my ideas are good. that's yeah, absolutely. Prototyping is like it's key. In fact, I've gone to a few talks on how people prototype them. We are really lucky today that the tools we have as designers, because I'm not very good at programming. In fact, I'm not able to program really at all. But I've got tools that do it for me. So I live in a world where I don't need to know that kind of stuff to be able to check if my idea translates as well as I thought it would. But right now, I haven't been prototyping that much because I'm kind of like in hard development, but yes, prototyping, absolutely. Everybody should, and everybody, it's constant. Iteration is so easy now. It's so easy to just like change a line of code, press enter, and the game builds right there. You're like, oh, okay, it works better if it's a half a second slower. Like, it's not even prototyping anymore, it's just building the game. It's quite interesting. But of course, if you're coming with a new concept and a quick prototype is needed, I've seen games getting ditched at prototype stage, not because they were bad games, but because the person who's looking at them couldn't see past bad graphics. You know? So prototyping is not just about the game mechanic. You need to invest a lot into making someone else believe in your vision, and sometimes it's through words. Sometimes it's just through a still image. I got inspired by like one image last week of a game that we were thinking of prototyping, and I just saw the potential. I said, that is a really good idea, and I was like, that will make millions of dollars. I was like, that would make so much money, but like then someone else won't see that. So it's really hard to know what the perfect way of getting your idea to someone else is, but that's part of the job, I guess. And prototyping, like of something physical they can actually interact with, takes a lot of time to get right, because if you have an idea and then you only get it to 90% of the way to someone else, they don't see the other 10%, they can't see it. It's like nothing to them. So prototyping can be also really it can crush your idea if the person you're showing it to has no vision or doesn't have the same vision as you. But it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. But yeah, I don't know. You should prototype, but you should also be constantly changing your idea as you go. Ollie?
So, you were talking about games for every platform. At the same time, you said that we should think about platform first. So, if we're designing a game for touchscreen, we're thinking of mechanics that use touch interface, right? But when we're going cross-platform, that's not really an option, is it? Because we're using Facebook, and we're using the touch interface, and we're using whatever else, right? So that doesn't really make sense going forward. Are we going to be like dumbing down on mechanics as we go cross-platform?
I think so. That's a really good question. I think that we do dumb down games, mobile, already. A lot of games just have one button. That's it. Some games have two. Ooh. And then like you go canvas and it's one click, but it's like 100,000 things on the screen and going on at the same time, and arrows flying everywhere. And so there's bad design on both sides. A good example of what Ollie's talking about now is Fruit Ninja was a great game. Absolutely love that game on my iPhone. I can't stand that game playing it with a mouse. The game is good. The port to the PC or to Facebook is really good. I like what they did with it, how they approached the model. But their interfacing doesn't work. The swipe mechanic doesn't work. Hand-eye coordination doesn't work when you're not physically touching it. And that's an example of how when you try and make a game and you think only one platform, and then you port it to the next platform, and it doesn't really work very well. And vice versa, it happens the other way around too. But I think that if you want to utilize both platforms with a social integration with Facebook or some sort of thing in the middle that's like connecting all the players together, you can, and it will dumb down maybe the mechanics, but you can still make really good games out of it, like exceptionally good games out of it. I play a lot of games that only have one button that can go on touch screen and canvas, and they're really good. I mean, I think the games that I've been working on recently are very capable of going on both platforms. So I don't think it's impossible. But yes, some people just want to make a game for one platform, and that's fine. And that's great. because I don't want everybody to do this, because then I'll only be playing these games. You know, like for example, Hotline Miami, which came out last week, really good game. 2 guys from Sweden made it, and it's like looks like GTA 1, and the whole game is go around kicking the crap out of people, beating them up. It's pretty much got 2 buttons, and it's really good, but it wouldn't ever work, I don't think. Well, maybe it would, but I don't think it would work on an iPhone or any touchscreen device very well. Carmageddon I got, and I got it for my iPhone. And I was like, oh, Carmageddon, yes, oh, it's gonna be awesome. Yeah, it doesn't work. I have no, like, it's some of the design is a bit flawed in terms of the controls, and I'm trying to steer, and then I realize my finger isn't even on the button anymore. So, yeah, it's hard to design for every platform, but these games didn't do that, and I think that if you start with thinking of all the platforms in one, you can make a game that is compatible. And it's not going to be necessarily the same game I make, it's going to be the same game you make, or anybody, because the mechanics can't be different. Just, we need to think of the interfacing for all platforms at the same time, if you're following what this talk is about. But yeah, you might start limiting yourself, not necessarily a bad thing.
I have a question about costs. Obviously there was a talk about AAA titles, and costs were increased from 50 million a few years ago to 100 million now. Do you think the same thing is going to happen to the mobile market?
Ooh. Yeah. Well, in terms of 100%, yeah, probably, but not in terms of 50 million.
I don't know costs of mobile now, like, let's say something like this.
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, BioWare attempted to make the world's most expensive game, and they did a really good job of making the world's most expensive game. That sucked. Pretty well, not sucked. I mean, like, I think the Old Republic as an MMO was a really good idea, but I just couldn't enjoy it as much as I don't know if spending all the money in the world makes a good game at all. In fact, I think that that's not the right way to quantify making something good. I mean, some companies might make a game with 50 people, and another company or one person makes a game, and he just puts his earnings into it. Team meat, 2 guys, sweat, hard work, create a little company for themselves, and they make really, really good games. And yeah, I don't know. I think mobile costs will go up because that's just going to happen. But I think also some people won't do that too, and they'll still make really good products. And one of the questions earlier was like, how do you get yourself out there? How do you get yourself out there? And hopefully, like Apple and like the Android marketplace will start making that a lot easier for us. Because right now it is catering to the big guys. It's catering to the people who've got the virality. But it's really hard for me to find a game that I like because it's like not in the top 10. And I think that these guys make really good games don't have the budgets. Perhaps that's where the budget's going to go. If it's going to double or triple or whatever, it's not because the game's going to be more expensive to make, because you're competing against people with like 10 million or 5 million or whatever. So hopefully that won't go that way, but it's a business. It's an industry that revolves quite a lot around money. I can't tell. I don't think it's necessary to spend double the amount of money to make a better game, but sometimes it is. Okay guys, so I'm pretty much out of time, but it was really, really good to have this talk, and I know it was a bit different maybe than what I originally planned, but thanks for coming, and my information is still there. You can email me, maybe I'll have the slideshow up online, but I haven't decided when I'll do that, so yeah, thanks very much for your attention, and enjoy the rest of the conference, and come up and talk to me if you want to talk about anything at all.